Right, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Josh Brooks. I'm the Business Development Director for Packaging here at Easyfairs. Some of you will know me better as the former editor and publisher of Packaging News. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be with Easyfairs and chairing this afternoon's session. It started off life being about the food packaging sector. It morphed very quickly into something that is going to be pretty much exclusively about the plastics issue. And we have 2 hours this afternoon with some really top-notch speakers to talk about that. I'm going to do my little introduction for that in just a second. Our very first point of order is that earlier in the day, about an hour ago, Kevin Weiss from Marks & Spencer's hosted the Eco Pack Challenge. Kevin's going to give us 30 seconds on that and announce the winner of it. So Kevin, I'm going to hand over to you straight away.
I'm working? Yes. Hello. Yes, I don't. If those of you who are down at the EcoPack stage would have seen us listening to 5 really great sustainable packaging ideas. The judges then went over to the VIP lounge and spent a good 20 minutes actually just deliberating about who we thought should be the winner, and it was a pretty tough call actually. But we did come up with a winner, and we've also, because we felt there was something in the competition that we should just draw attention to, we've got a highly commended as well. But the winner is VTT from Finland, who is just here. Congratulations. There you go. Okay. There's your little trophy to take with you. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And also highly commended. We wanted to give just a bit of praise to James Cropper and their paper moulding. We thought the colour piece was really an exciting principle, really, that we can do different things with different materials. We don't necessarily always have to conform to the same pattern. So that's our highly commended. Thank you very much.
Kevin, thank you. Right, we're going to crack on then with the plastics debate, and we're delighted to be hosting this as Easyfairs in association with the Foodservice Packaging Association. I'm going to be hosting this. My co-host is Martin Kersh, who's the executive director of the Foodservice Packaging Association. So we'll hear more from him in a bit. It's hard to remember a time, I'm going to go to reading my notes now, it's hard to remember a time when packaging, and especially plastic packaging, has been so high profile in the press and in the public consciousness. Since the airing in particular of the BBC's Blue Planet 2 in October, the undeniably grave problem of ocean plastics has become the subject of regular front page news, and many high profile organisations, including brands, retailers, food service operators, airlines, government departments, and the BBC, to name a few, have pledged to reduce and in some cases eliminate their use of plastic packaging or increase their use of recycled materials. Government, of course, is taking a close interest in this, with Theresa May promising a 25-year war, in inverted commas, on plastic waste, with the goal of stopping unavoidable plastic waste altogether and a pledge to bring plastic-free aisles to the supermarkets in the UK. It's worth noting on that, such a thing was announced this morning in Holland, and we wait with bated breath to understand whether there are any polymers in there or not, or if they're bioplastics or what. The mystery remains. So behind the hyperbole, there is acknowledgement in this debate that plastics are not all bad, and many of us in this room will be happy to hear that. Even yesterday's Daily Mail, which marked the 10th anniversary of its own declaration of war, again in inverted commas, on plastic, said this. So in a piece from the UN's head of environment, a guy called Eric Solheim, it was written, albeit towards the end of his article, plastic is one of mankind's greatest inventions, which has transformed living standards, industry, global trade, medicine, and technology. So when the whole supply chain engages with the issue of the whole supply chain engages with the issue of ocean plastics, recycling rates, the latte levy, deposit return schemes, the PRN system and reform of it, and the rest, and these are the issues which have been high on the industry's agenda for years, not just since last October, We also know that plastics are the lightweight wonder material that reduce food waste, protect products in so many ways, and have been crucial to many, many aspects of how we as a society live today. All of us here today are likely to be involved in, be in some way affected by, and have strong opinions on this issue. In fact, and here I'm sure I'll get a good response, it would be useful if you could raise your hand if in the last 3 or 4 months this is a question that you've been grappling with in some way in your working lives. So hands up. Okay.
Whoa.
No surprise there. That's very interesting. So today, we'll hear from some of the key people at the sharp end of this debate. At Iceland, the Coca Cola, M&S, and of course the Foodservice Packaging Association, about how they are responding, and we'll explore some of the big questions around the plastics issue for the whole supply chain. Things like, what are retailers, brands and packaging suppliers doing in response to this current focus? How is the industry engaging with government on the debate? Is this a short-lived trend or a real moment of change? How do we ensure as an industry that we're getting... sorry, I don't think I completed my sentence on that one. What are the risks of unintended consequences of PR stunts and greenwash in response to this issue? What does it mean for the packaging suppliers and designers amongst us? And what compromises are we, as an industry and as a society, ready to make in order to fix the big ocean plastics issue? So to kick things off, I'm going to hand over to Martin Kersh, the Executive Director of the Foodservice Packaging Association, who's going to share with us the latest thinking and direction from government on how the various relevant departments in Whitehall and the industry are engaging on this issue. Martin, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you. Just to give me, I am Martin Kirsch. I am the Executive Director of the Foodservice Packaging Association, and our members work in the manufacturing or converting, distribution, and use of packaging used to serve food and drink away from the home. So everything from takeaways to kebab vans, you name it, right the way through into catering. So it is a very, very wide market, and of course it's using all materials. So we're not just about plastics. Paper and board and wood and other items or materials are also really important to us. What is interesting about us is, and we have been accused in this whole debate of being patient zero. And if you think about it, we had the cup issue a couple of years ago. Does everybody remember the bus going around London festooned in paper cups? And more recently, of course, we're seeing straws on the front pages. And it's curious, really, because these are the beacons of what society thinks is bad about packaging, and yet the combined weight, well, if I say the weight of the tonnage weight of paper cups is something like 30,000 tons, and that represents something like 0.2% of total waste. Well, straws are a microcosm of that, and yet these are headlines. Why? Because these are very three-dimensional objects and are very visible relative to the percentage they take up of total waste in this country. Because of this, and because we've been making front page news and so forth, we're very much in discussions with DEFRA, with the Treasury, which I never ever thought for one moment I would ever be having meetings with the Treasury, with the regional governments as well. But in addition to that, we talk to the non-government organizations like Greenpeace, Green Alliance, both of which spoke at one of our recent seminars, which is a good thing because you can always find areas in common. Even with people you think you may disagree with, there's always some areas, because after all, we both have the same goals. We want more recycling and we don't want litter. And I hope that is something which is absolutely shared in this room today. We've also consult with various other environment organizations, waste organizations such as RAP, trade associations, and of course retailers. And it's fantastic having these retailers here today, and I think we are very pleased about that. As I say, the media coverage has been large. It's headlines. I don't think a day goes past where in one publication or on a radio station or on a TV program, there isn't at least one major article about packaging. I would say in the last 6 months, I don't think we've missed a beat as far as that's concerned. And this morning was about plastic-free aisles, reference to one supermarket in Amsterdam, but I'm sure these gentlemen will pick up on that much later. I'm not just going to talk about what's known as the 25-year environmental plan, which was launched in January. I think we should talk about a little bit about our Secretary of State, who is much more interesting as far as we're concerned than previous Secretaries of State. The Treasury and what they're doing. Scotland, which has a deposit return system trial taking place, but is doing an incredible amount of side-ranging consultation, and that is good to see. And Wales, which is itching to use its powers to levy taxes. Ireland is also another interesting one as well. There's talk of a latte levy there. I reference Ireland because often what happens in Ireland is taken up by the rest of the European Union. So it's always important to know what is going on in the Irish Republic. The background to what we're hearing now from government is a government which lost quite a lot of votes to young people in the last general election, had a warmer feel after they passed the gay marriage bill, and now wants to be seen as much softer, nicer, friendlier, warmer, cuddlier even, and appealing, very importantly, to those younger votes which are going to probably determine the next election. So they have taken, quite rightly, they've taken a deep interest in matters environmentally. I mentioned the Secretary of State before, and the reason for mentioning him is, certainly since 2010, this is the first Secretary of State who has taken a deep, genuine, and constructive, I will say, interest in packaging. He is very, very engaged in packaging. He has had discussions. He has brought people in. We've not had a Secretary of State do that for a very long time. And often these Secretaries of State, and in fact some of the ministers, they're at DEFRA, they're kind of passing through DEFRA onto other things, and many of them have. I would imagine this one is equally Michael Gove passing through, but I'm assuming he is going to go on to very much higher things, if not the highest thing. And he's certainly the one Secretary of State who is on board to get more bills passed than the others. So that's him. How many people can name the shadow secretary or shadow minister for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs? It's a Labour politician. Can anybody give me a name apart from you? Anybody? Well, that is interesting. This is an important role. It is so important to have a lively opposition and a higher level of debate. What has happened is both the other main political parties have pretty much given this to the Conservatives. She is called Sue Hayman. She isn't engaging, as opposed to the Minister, Therese Coffey, as opposed to Michael Gove, who very much are. And I would say that is a great lost opportunity. The Lib Dems have become too obsessed in cups and aren't looking at the wider remit of packaging. They've boxed themselves into a corner on this, and this is the only club they seem to have in the bag. The cornerstone of the government is the 25-year environment plan. They've ushered it in ahead of schedule, and I think you can all pretty much work out why they may have done that. I attended the Prime Minister's speech. It was very wide-ranging. So let's face it, what we're here today about is only one part of this whole plan. It covers everything from the protection of iconic places to looking after seas, ocean, land, and so forth. It is very, very wide. But you know, you have to go on the sound bites. I mean, to quote what the 25-year plan is about, environment plan is about, is we will minimize waste, reuse materials as much as we can, and manage materials at the end of their life. That is as much as we can, by the way, at the end of their life, to minimize the impact on the environment. And then it sets out how they will do that. Talk of zero avoidable waste by 2050. For those who know me, I genuinely will be retired by then, by the way. The working to target the elimination of avoidable plastic waste by the end of 2042. Avoidable plastic waste. What is avoidable? Okay, there's a lot of definition needing here. There is also references to litter. But let's face it, the key things are those sound bites, the things which are named in a press release. That is what government wants to communicate. They want to communicate, they mentioned plastic-free aisles. They mentioned extending the carrier bag charge to all retailers rather than those businesses employing more than 250 people, which was, I will admit, something we negotiated with government at the time. However, we believe it should be extended to all businesses. Why? Because it establishes that there shouldn't be what we call a de minimis, a minimum size of business for being involved with it, if you like, something which we want to apply to producer responsibility. So I think that sets a very important precedent, very important. The other aspect which I will refer to in the sound bites was this point I raised before, eliminating avoidable plastic waste. And this is something which is, needs clarification. But this is a 25-year plan, but the election is in 4 years. My belief is that what those bits in the soundbite, if it's going to be of benefit to this government, if they're looking to win the next general election, aren't looking for 25 years, they are looking for 4 years. They must be. So let's please not think 25 years is a long way ahead. We may well be doing other things. No, it's not. Let's think in terms of the 4 years. Another interesting thing which is in there was that post-Brexit, God forbid it should ever come, but post-Brexit, environmental law from the EU will be incorporated into our law. That's very significant for those of you concerned, for instance, with material contact issues. And I would say a very, very positive thing. But it also has effect for the targets which are going to be in the circular economy package, and for extended producer responsibility. And for those of you who follow these things, there is something called the Packaging Waste Directive. And what it is looking like is something like a responsibility for business. It's claimed between 50 to 80%. But rather cutely, they then say providing business picks up the remainder. Well, I reckon that makes 100%, so I can't read that any other way, but if someone can enlighten me on that one, I would be hugely appreciative. So, other things which are mentioned in the 25-year plan, and this one really does affect our members, is the removal of single-use plastics from government offices. That is actually real hard, solid business, and it's pretty big business as well, as gentlemen in the front here will tell me. Government contracts are gold dust. They are worth a lot of money. A great thing for you all is money for research and development. There are sums, there are figures which are in that plan, and you would be nuts not to go for it when they publish how you do go about getting it. It references evidence re a plastics tax, and I'll come back to that. On page 87, and you have to read the first 86 pages to get there, is a reference, thank the Lord, to producer reform. This is something we would say is absolutely vital. Why? Because businesses said they are willing to reform the packaging recovery note system, which they feel will achieve everything everybody wants to achieve and which is being talked about, but for all packaging, not just plastics, not just bottles, not just cups, but right across packaging. And this is something industry is willing to fund. On a personal note, I would say I was surprised not to see more about litter, given the government had a litter strategy published last year. And I would have thought it would have been worth having more in there about litter as well. So I think summing up of the 25-year plan is that all efforts to increase sustainability and recycling must be and should be encouraged. So anything which does that is something which the industry supports. And the plan really should set out and say and acknowledge all those efforts of industry, the hard-earned money that you people put into these schemes, should recognize what business is already doing. And there's some brilliant work going on. I think as time goes on, the NGOs, the non-government organizations, will vent their frustration if the plan is not in place, if things aren't happening, if it's happening too slowly. They've seen this plan, they've said, okay, but let's see what it's made of, not just publishing this just for the sake of currying great favor. And I would say what needed now is a process for formal review of progress against that plan. It seems logical, and that progress should include references in a glossary, however they want to put it, to all the other works which have been going on, some of which may well have been stimulated by the 25-year plan. The Environmental Audit Committee you may have read about, which is a parliamentary, not government grouping, had an inquiry into bottles and cups. It raised an awful lot of ideas and schemes, including charges and a deposit return system. It also referenced, because we got it in early, was the need for a UK-wide solution for on-the-go recycling, on-the-go waste management. So wherever you go, you have a common system. And that is available to all to capture the good stuff which we're missing and we don't want to miss it. And they also mentioned what I will keep going back with, which is the packaging recovery note reform. It may well be parliamentary, but it's certainly not half captured government attention. In response, and which was only published 2 days ago, and I was interested to know the government doesn't publish the response. The response goes to the Environmental Audit Committee, who then decide when they are going to publish it. It's slightly different. It says, and these are very good words, we will need to consider how a deposit return system or other behavioral incentives would fit in with other planned work, such as a wider reform of the packaging waste producer responsibility regime and the call for evidence on the potential for taxes or charges for single-use plastics. They've said this, and they've quote, in order to avoid producers or consumers being charged multiple times for the same products. That is really important. These potential incentives would all work towards the same overall outcomes of increasing recycling and reducing litter. Now, those are very interesting words. I'm a little bit shocked that I seem to be the only person who read this, and I don't get it, because it is published and it is there to find, and no one has picked up on that. But this shows balance, better thinking, a more constructive approach to it, looking for evidence, and really looking for a more for solutions which are going to have the best effect, which are going to deliver the best return. That is very good. What I think is very sad is that Mary Cray is the lady who chairs the Environmental Audit Committee, cannot get close to her own front bench. And that, to me, is frankly a waste for the Labour Party. She is a great talent. I'm not going to say I agree with everything by far, but honestly, she really does know her stuff, and it's just a waste of a resource, ironically. The Treasury, we've had a couple of meetings with the Treasury. They will soon be calling for a call for evidence on the tax on single-use plastics. This was the one which was leaked, the government's usual favourite method of getting information to everybody, but was leaked in November, I think it was. There is going to be a call for consultation. I can tell you now that the Treasury do not seem to be able or wanting to or decide or determine what single use is. So here we'll have a call, but it'll say single use, but it won't actually define what is a single use piece of packaging. And I'm not aware, apart from glass for milk bottles and so on, to my mind, most packaging gets used once and is reprocessed into something else. So that to me would say all packaging, but that's a very logical way of looking at it. And again, I go back in our discussions, we are making sure, we are wanting to make sure, and we are trying to get them to reference PRN reform in the terms of that call for evidence. Other things to point out are DEFRA will soon be announcing its report on voluntary economic incentives, which will include reference to deposits. There is a DEFRA consultation on paper cups about to be launched at some stage. The Mayor of London has conducted an inquiry into waste management in London, and if you've ever lived in London, you will know the difficulties of that. Curious enough, they published their London plan yesterday. I bet nobody read that, apart from me. And that revealed, actually, funny enough, 54% of waste in London is construction. And as they say, and only 70% of waste comes from households, which is quite interesting. Not a lot of people know that. There's various targets in that, but I do think they've missed a lot of opportunities. I've mentioned the minister, Therese Coffey. She is a minister who listens. She doesn't necessarily always agree, but to have a minister who listens and takes notes and remembers is a wonderful thing. That is good. She is very engaged in all of this. I'm very proud of the fact that we had an industry round table, took place in December. It was chaired by Lord Deben. At that round table, we had all the major, well not all, we had major brands and major retailers sat in one room, competitors with each other. And one of the things they were greatly in favor of was reform of the producer responsibility system, the PRN system in this country. What we're asking for is to ensure that every penny which is charged as a tax or whatever, levy, goes into what it's meant to go for. And that is increasing collection, improving sorting, and increasing recycling. There should be full transparency. This money that you would be putting into this and that consumers will be ultimately paying should not be disappearing into treasury coffers. It should be used to do something which have now been deemed to be really important for this country. So it must happen. So what we're saying is there are 6 principles. Some of the key ones are to eliminate even what we call de minimis, the minimum entry point at which you start paying. So we're doing that is, one, the money is needed, but the other part of it is it'll encourage more business as a whole, to be involved in waste management, to think about what they're doing, to be responsible. And that is a culture we need to foster in that. We want to reward recyclability. We want to reward recycled content. We want to make sure we have consistency throughout the whole system with a base method for recording recycling and labeling and so on. And what we want to make sure is that if you export waste, you don't get a benefit for the nature of the bales of those bales which go out there, which may well have contamination. They shouldn't benefit over what's recycled in the UK and the rest of the EU. Now, getting this on the agenda has been quite tough, but it's happening. DEFRA have got stakeholder groups taking place. So I think what this is doing is getting us to the starting grid, and that's so important. I think we're open, we would say as an industry, we're open to all possibilities being tested. We just want to make sure reform of the producer responsibility system is also part of that, is part of the test and gets its opportunity to be tested. And we believe it will be proven to be the most effective solution to achieve what everybody wants. The Minister and the Secretary of State are in a position to make this happen. It really is up to you to be talking about these issues, both to your business MP and to your personal home MP, to your staff, to make them aware of what is going on and that these are the options which are out there on the table. And, you know, it's just ensuring that that MPs certainly just genuinely understand, because what we have at the moment are each MP is trying to be greener than the other MP. They're signing petitions, they're saying, I'm giving this up for Lent, I'm greener than you know, and this is something which is spread throughout the House of Commons. If we do get behind this, then there's every opportunity that our recycling rates can become amongst the best, if not the best, in the EU. There's no reason why not. And the other part of this is, and it's our absolute priority, is to ensure secure the long-term success of your businesses. Thank you.
Martin, thank you so much. Martin, thank you so much for that overview. We'll take questions for Martin, I think, when we come to the to the debate section of our session. So, moving swiftly on. In January, Iceland grabbed headlines and airtime when it pledged to remove all plastics from its own label packaging by 2023. And it was the first supermarket, at least in the UK, to make such a pledge. I'm sure I'll be corrected as to whether it was in the world. For our keynote presentation this afternoon, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Ian Schofield, Iceland's own label and packaging manager, who's going to talk us through the pledge and how Iceland intends to achieve its goal. Ian, over to you.
Can you hear me okay? All right. Can everybody hear me? Great, brilliant. Obviously, on the 16th of January, a few people spilt some cornflakes. I certainly did, because it was a big day for our business and a big day for the industry. But more importantly, it was a big day for packaging. Whatever your view on plastics, that day was a big, big day. It got us on the headlines in the news. It got us on the headline in the press. It actually got to government that day. And in fact, Theresa May mentioned us in Parliament that day. I'm going to cover why we got there. I'm going to cover what we're allowing and what we're not allowing. That's going to cause some controversy, some debate, some discussion, and that's what we want. We haven't got all the answers. You haven't got all the answers. Well, not yet. I've not seen them anyway. And actually, we do need one hell of a lot of cooperation and collaboration to make this thing happen. It's not just about Iceland. All we did was get it a catalyst to get it in the news. It's about our policies, about our home, it's about our life. And when the government came out with 2042 that day, I'll probably be dead. The kids I'm talking to will not be. And when I was interviewed on Newsround, those who remember John Craven's Newsround, I was on Newsround the other week, and these two kids, 7 and 11-year-old, were so concerned, and they had the badges on, Kids Against Plastics, which I thought was a bit harsh, because there's a misunderstanding. But every kid at school, they have now got millions and millions of followers at school. This is kids at school pledging themselves not to use plastics. So this is deep, and it runs deep, and people have got a lot of emotion about it, and I'm going to take you through the whole cycle. This is how it started.
It is estimated more than 12 million tonnes of plastic enters the world's oceans every year, putting the lives of all forms of marine life at risk. Toxins released when plastics break down in the ocean are then re-entering the food chain via seafood. Plastic also creates a significant recycling issue, as only around 1/3 of plastics are recycled in the UK, and the remainder either ends up in landfill or is discarded illegally. This situation is now unsustainable, and it's the responsibility of everyone, including retailers, to make a difference.
Iceland is aiming to become the world's first mainstream retailer to fully eliminate plastic packaging from our own label products, which covers more than 1,000 product lines, by 2023. It's an issue that we care deeply about, and the results of our consumer research is clear. UK consumers believe supermarkets need to make changes in the way they package food and the materials used.
The technologies and materials for producing a diverse range of non-plastic packaging are now becoming commercially available. We're in the process of producing our new February ranges. Within the ranges, we're now going to be using a new paper-based tray. We have a real opportunity here to make a huge difference to the environment. It's a pledge that we're determined to deliver on.
The onus is on retailers, as a leading contributor to plastic packaging pollution, to take a stand and deliver real and long-lasting change. There really is no excuse anymore for excessive packaging that creates needless waste and damages our environment. And we're working closely with our supportive own brand suppliers to ensure that this pledge becomes a reality.
So, quite a provocative statements in there, and a lot of things that concern us all. But whether you like it or you're not, we got over 1 billion touches on our websites, on our touch points, in every angle, 1 billion people within 4 days. That's unprecedented on any level. 520 pieces of media we had to do, and it started really because it caught the imagination. It wasn't this about Iceland, it was about what is happening with our plastics. And just to give you an idea of some of the things, so everyone can see it, it went absolutely Finnish television, Belgian television, Dutch television, it went absolutely everywhere, just not in the UK, and it went across and was also mentioned in the government discussions that day. It's been an incredible, incredible change, and it's caught up with a lot of emotion. Obviously the plastics industry I invited in as well as part of our discussions. It's been a very, very good and a very, very steady relationship that we've had. I was trained on plastics like everybody else, and I'm going to go back to that in a little bit longer. It just went on and on and on. Even Michael Gove sent us a letter. David Attenborough talked to us. We had Leonardo DiCaprio in. Everybody got on the bandwagon because they care, and they care deeply. And that's why we can't not do anything. We have to do something. And that means we're just a catalyst, that's all we are. And when you start looking at some of the Gaias around the world, and I've been to some of these, it's disgusting. You know, Richard, who was on there a minute ago, he's a surfer. And when he was first surfing in the sea off Cornwall, he was absolutely disgusted by the amount of plastics around him 2 years on a row. Then we went out to see one of these guys in the Indian Ocean, and it was shocking. There was plastic everywhere. And everyone thinks it's just Asia. I'm going to cover that in a minute. So the next thing we did, we called our suppliers in.
This is Chester University. Chester University's got good links to packaging and food production, and we're here today to present our suppliers with all our knowledge and efforts to remove plastics.
We can't do this alone. We need their help, we need their ideas, their collaboration to make this vision a reality. The reality is that every minute a truckload of plastic is entering the ocean. We must attempt to turn down the tap of plastic production.
Key for us is to make sure that we get the message clearly across what's allowed and what's not allowed, and that plastics are out.
The collaboration starts now, and we can work with them to really blaze a trail and lead the way in the world to make plastic removal a reality.
By moving to cartonboard trays with the Hungry Heroes range, Iceland is saving 60 tonnes per year in plastic and reducing the plastic content by 90% on each of the packs.
I think by collaborating together we can make a huge difference. Although we're a provider of plastic, we laminate and print and we do various different products, so we see it as an opportunity.
We'll be working as closely as we can with Iceland on this new challenge, both in investment and offering solutions to other products in the category that could be moved across and save the weight of plastic being used.
There's an overwhelming desire for this from the customer. It's unequivocal, and we can't do this alone. We need help and collaboration across the industry, not just from packaging suppliers, but also from retailers as well, because that'll lead to more investment, which will reduce costs, and it'll speed up the removal of plastics.
For the planet, we've got to do these things. You know, we've all said enough is enough for plastics. You know, people are not going far enough. We've had a great response since we launched this, and I'm pleased to say that I'm confident about some of those solutions.
Sorry about the film going slightly out there. So I'm now going to hit head on some of the discussions that everyone's having. Everyone is chatting about these, so I'm going to hit them head on. So some of the plastic arguments we've had back to us is about weight. Yeah, good argument. But you know what? At everything I've done so far, I haven't had a weight issue. But yeah, of course, if you're replacing everything with glass, you'll have a weight issue. We're not. Food safety. Who is going to ever compromise food safety? Nobody is. No retailer's going to do it. I'm certainly not going to do it. So we, at a shadow of a doubt, we're not going to put any solutions forward that's going to be even close to affecting food safety. That would be crazy. So that's the next one. Food waste. Good argument. Let's talk about the cucumber. Yeah? Food waste is a massive issue. I, on my own, can't solve it, Iceland can't solve it, other retailers can't solve it. But we can help, we can support in educating the consumer on what to do with food. And we will. We're going to go on a big purge of education, and it should be really easy what you do with food. It shouldn't be difficult. And there's going to be lots and lots of food indicators coming along, lots and lots of new technology, active technology coming along, which is going to help us on best before, it's going to help us on these other dates, and it's going to help us tell us where the shelf life is on product. So food waste is huge, and I don't think I'm going to put any more food waste in because I'm taking plastic out. In fact, I'm going to gain a lot of help with shelf life. Now retailers, of course, we're absolutely paranoid about shelf life. We want as much shelf life as we can get, because we don't like wastage. And amazingly, our wastage is down at an all-time low. We have very, very little that goes to waste. And what we do now is we make sure it goes to the homeless and cafes and everything else. We've done tons on that, and so has every other retailer. So food waste, for me, is not a big debate here. We're actually going to get more shelf life out of some lines, not less. And where food waste is an issue, we're going to tackle it. And so is every other retailer. We're not going to let this happen, but it's got to be through education and a little bit of government and a little bit of support by everybody else to make sure we know what to do with food waste. So not an issue for me, massive for us in terms of education, but we're certainly not going to stop us, it's not going to stop us going away from plastic, and I'll come back to that. It's only Asia. The number of times I've heard people say it's only Asia. So I went out with Plymouth University, and I went round all of Cornwall, and we picked out all this microplastic out of the sea. All of it, around the coast. Now, I don't know about you, my geography is pretty good. Plymouth is not in Asia, right? So the key thing is, it isn't just in Asia, it's everywhere. And you know what? When we did all the gannets and we did the seagulls on the coast near Amsterdam, every single one of them had plastic microparticles in them. Now, if you don't care about that, then you shouldn't be here. We should care about it. It is not good. Why is it there? So the argument is, it's only Asia. No, it isn't. It's here, and it's not going away, and it's getting worse. The next one, CO2. Yeah, of course. They're all in this calculation. Of course we need to know what we're doing with materials, where we're shipping them from. We all buy from all over the world. Every retailer, every brand buys from all over the world. CO2 is a factor. It's just one of the factors in the mix. The next one, it's only fish. It ain't only fish. Other things are being affected in the food chain by what we are doing. So as a packaging industry, we owe it to ourselves to do something. Hence you can see why we've got to turn this tap down, yeah? You can see where we got to when we're going through the discussion. So, a few other things, and we need to tackle them and bang on because we need to know where we are. The circular economy, I read it. I read the whole thing, and it's a big document, and it's absolutely the right thing to do. We need to do it. But it doesn't go far enough, not in our eyes. But we absolutely got to do it. This has got to happen, right? So all those experts, 180 I think there was, Kev, including you, I think there was 180 people in total, I think, from every industry got together to bring this document together. It's a cracking document. We've got to support it, but it still is about plastics. It's not just about plastics, but the main concern was plastics, single use. Recycling. blimey, we could all talk to the cows come home. Martin's just had a big chat on recycling. I can't sort out recycling myself. We need a lot of help from a lot of other people. But you know what, having been around most of the recyclers now, and there is money in recycling, that is a massive support to what we're all now trying to do. Recycling is going to be more sophisticated, it's getting more sophisticated. There may be a crossover of what I'm doing on removing plastics to plastics being totally recyclable. At the moment, the vast majority of items are recyclable, they're just not being recycled. So that is a problem because it's still going where we don't need it to go. So all I'm doing is turning the tap down in 2.5% of the market in Iceland. I'm just doing my bit. Everybody else has got to decide what they do, but we need collaboration to make sure whatever this hopper we're creating of plastics is going somewhere where it's controlled. And it needs to be controlled, whether that's the circular economy or recycling or compostable, which is another subject I'll come to in a bit longer. The China ban, also the government and EU rules, I can't do much about them. You know what? I don't really care. Because whatever they come up with, I've probably done it before they get to me. Because normally retail, we move before they do, as a general rule. Now, plastic 5p carry, we knew that was coming 10 years before it came. So there's a lot of things the government will do, and the EU maybe do, that actually will have been way past that by the time they come to us. Because we'll have already done it. We'll see it coming. The China ban, well, I don't know about you, but I had a massive misconception that my rubbish at the back of my house that I was collecting, my cardboard, and I was doing my plastics, I was putting them in all in the right thing, I actually thought all those were going to be recycled. And it turned out mine was going to China. Again, what are we doing? What on earth are we doing? It's wrong. We cannot continue to do this. We have to turn the tap down. Then there's other materials coming along. Now I'm making it really, really hard for myself as a packaging technologist to actually put some of these materials in, because no one can prove things to me that they don't break down into microplastics. Loads of work going on them, but nobody can prove to me they're going to break down into nothing, or they're going to be reused into something. So that is a big issue for me, because it'd be great if I just had that holy grail, and actually for a lot of us, it would be great if we just had those products. We could quickly move overnight. Oh, great, solution's solved, I've got a new material, I can go into it. But actually, I can't yet. And also, there's no marine environment test yet that's actually one that's proven. And they're trying to now change that. So we do need a type of Swiss ordnance coordination to give us what the marine test on breakdown is. And we need that fast. And working with the Scandinavians has been really good for me, because they're really keen on this sort of things, massively keen. And it's been interesting what they're doing in some of theirs to make sure we have the same standards as they do, which is basically zero tolerance. And we've got to do the same. Bioplastics, can't go into them either, because, again, I've got nothing that's proving that it's not breaking down into nothing. So I've got a problem with bioplastics. Oxy-biodegradables come around now, where you put an additive in, and hopefully that breaks it down to nothing as well. It doesn't. And the number of times that we're all stood there as packaging technologists, when we're trying to do our policies in our companies and say this is what we should be doing, I keep saying no, no, no. So I am making my job so hard that it's difficult to what material do I put it into. And in 5 years I've got to have all my plastic gone. So it'd be great if I could just use half of these to do it, but I can't yet, because I've got to wait for the testing procedures to come through and new materials. So, it's interesting, what solutions have we got? So when I trained in the co-op all those years ago here, in the central laboratories team, and I've still got my mug from the lads when I trained, and I got my qualification, I trained on cans, glass, paperboard, plastics, everything. The co-op then had 100 manufacturing factories. They had a winery, they had a tea factory, they had a coffee works, still might have it. They had a margarine factory. I worked in every single one of them. Guess what I was doing? I was removing everything from natural materials into plastics. That was my job. And I've been doing that job now for 40 years. Moving things out of natural materials into plastics. So I might know a thing or two about plastics, But guess what I'm doing now? I'm moving them back. How daft is that? But how sensible is that? Moving them back. Now that might mean I have less shelf life. That might mean I don't have as much control over my supply base as I used to have. But you know what? It's a risk worth taking. And I can do that because I'm lucky. I work in an independent business. I work for the MD of Iceland. I can go to him and say, we're going to put those in paper bags. Well, that's going to be useless because there's no shelf life. I know. I'm actually going to put cucumbers with no plastic on it because it's only going to have 3 days shelf life. And I'm going to get bags so they can go and collect them. That's what we used to do. So there are solutions. They don't have to be, I've got to have the latest round wheel from a square wheel, the latest innovation in packaging technology. I don't. It's about compromise. It's about balance. It's about doing the right thing. It's about taking a massive tonnage. 2 lines of eggs, I removed 2 lines of eggs from polystyrene back to pulp. It's 2,000 tons of material. Massive, massive amount of plastics. I'm just doing my bit. I'm only part of it. I'm only part of the tap. Making sense? So what we said, and I'm sharing a lot of information here on purpose to help people and also to get the discussion going. So next thing is cost neutral. That's good, isn't it? Everybody loves cost neutral. But you know what? I said to everybody, that's what we've got to have. Because the consumer's not going to pay for this. The consumer's not going to say, I will pay more for my packaging, I will pay more for my product because you're taking all the plastics out. They might say they would if they did a survey, but you know what'd happen? They'd all walk. Tell you now, they would walk. So we can't put the price up. So in our ready meal area, we've already gone into board trays, as you can see, and by the end of the year, you'll see totally board trays. And on it goes. There's a whole ruck of things we can do. There's some very simple things, like taking plastics out of burgers, or out and frozen. It's a bit easier, obviously, because you've already got the freezing process. But why are we wrapping them in plastic, then putting them in board? We've always done it. Why are we doing it? So we're taking loads of plastic where we don't need it out. So there's some natural things you can do to take that tap down again. And this is big tonnage, really big tonnage. Eggs back to pulp, I mentioned. Produce back to pulp trays. I did some grape, I've been doing quite a lot of work with grapes of all things, and quite a few other things. And I'm actually getting more shelf life, 3 more days shelf life by going back to pulp with natural materials. So again, it's an interesting argument, isn't it? You know, we're going to have swings and roundabouts, of course we have, but when you are clear on what you're going for, i.e. plastic free, you know what you're going for. It's easier to concentrate on when you've got a compromise. And we put a program together in the business, and I'll let you have these slides, by the way, you can have these. We put a program in the business to show what our 5 years look like, what we're coming out of, and what the journey is out of some of these trays into where we need them to be. And we've done this across all the areas. And then what we've done, we started to look at packaging guidelines. This is really important. So the OPLR guidelines that we like, we really like, we think everybody should be using them, most people are. Obviously I want to turn all these to green. I don't want to have any of these black. So we're working really hard to make sure that the vast majority of our lines get green on them and not a black, i.e. we don't know if it can be recycled. Is it being recycled? Should it be recycled? We've got a lot of work to do as an industry, and again working with the government and everybody else, we've got a lot of work to do to make sure this is really clear to the consumer of what they're getting in their packaging. We owe it to them. We cannot complicate it with polymer science. We'll kill it. We've got to make sure it's really clear. And if you haven't seen it, that's what the chart looks like. When I'm doing an artwork every time, and I'm building all my artworks, we obviously bring it out on a chart where it sits on the chart. And we hate it now when it goes to black. We hate it with a passion. So, we've already signed up for the DRS because we think it will work. Only because of the Norwegian model, where they've got 96% of their bottles back, we think it will work in our stores quite well. It's a pain in the neck to put it in our stores. An absolute pain in the neck. But you know what? We think it's the right thing to do. because we can channel that plastic into the right place. Obviously, recycling, we've talked to DEFRA quite a bit. We're working now to make sure they know where our stance is, and that will come together now with the other retailers, and we're happy to work with everybody, by the way, to make sure that we collect this information together to go in one direction, so we do have a common ground on it. And I'm covering quite a bit of ground here, so stay with me, won't you? Please stay with me. So, biopolymers, I'm not going to go through all these, I've already gone through them. I can't use any of these yet, because none of them are proven to me. And every time I get a data sheet and I look through it, there's usually an issue with it. So there's usually a piece of plastic on it, or there's something that they can't tell me that breaks down in the marine environment. Every time there is something on the data sheet that worries me. So I've got a really tough task in terms of breaking this down. So has everybody else, by the way, because we owe it to ourselves to make sure it's better than this. We owe it to ourselves in the industry. We cannot blind them with science. Films and laminates, of course, I mean, Iceland, I've always used lots of laminates on the frozen foods. I don't need them for any other reason than aesthetics. I certainly don't need them for barrier, but I've used them forever just because I love them. And I like them, and I can reverse print them. But you know what? The first thing I can do is put all those, as Kev has in many cases, straight to polythene as a single layer. At least I'm doing one thing rather than having loads of laminates. But that's not my goal. My end goal is not to have that polythene or that plastic. My end goal is not to have it. It's a stepping process. Get out of laminates. That alone on frozen will be about 3,000 tonnes of laminate. So it all adds up in this turning the tap down of what is happening to our plastics. And ready meals and other trays, we've already said paper for us. There are other alternatives coming now, and we've noticed there's been absolute clamouring in the industry of everyone going to our paper board suppliers. Surprised that. This is the plastic dissolving, by the way. Iceland plastic. So we've put these guidelines to everybody now without going through them. I'm happy to share them because this is not Iceland actually, is it? This is just some of the things that we're doing to try and get our goal of no plastic. Just as we turn the tap down and the tonnage down in our area. That's all we're doing, yeah? So they're putting packaging guidelines, but this is just us talking to our supply base saying, have you got something? Have you got anything different? What have you got in your locker? I'm pleased to say the response has been really good, really good. We've got some great answers from people. Blimey, here's another one. My number 1 to number 6 of tonnages used is plastic milk bottles. Yeah. Now I worked on those as I did PET bottles in our Shield Oil co-op factory all those years ago to put PET in, and I worked on these milk bottles as well, putting them into milk. Fantastic, light weighting, all the things that the milk bottle gave us go into plastic. Fantastic. I've got to undo all that. And the interesting thing is that when we came out with this statement, lots of the manufacturers, the MDs of major milk companies, major cheese companies, all came to us and said, what does the next factory look like? What does the next factory look like without plastics? Interesting that, isn't it? Because they're already thinking that now. What does the next factory look like? So they're thinking that now, and we're working them on it because it might be we do go back to electric cars and doorstop deliveries in our everyday life. Why not? Even if it's in pockets, it takes out an issue. A few controversial issues here, isn't there? A few grenades thrown in. It goes on. I'm not going to go through them all. Where am I on time? Josh, where am I on time?
Yeah, I think so.
5 minutes.
Okay. Refills, another big debate. Refills got lots of issues for obvious reasons. Hygiene, people come in. I sort of get it with detergents. It's very difficult if they came on to do the milk. Can you imagine some of our customers coming in doing milk in Kirby and Liverpool? You know, it would be fun. It would be a lot of fun watching it. So I'm not so sure refilling is a great idea. That's just us. I don't think that will work. And we've also put for everybody our performance criteria, because if I didn't have to go in the microwave and the oven for ready meals, I wouldn't particularly have to have the polyester lining on it. I've got it on now just to protect my product and also to seal it. So we're actually causing issues for ourselves because we're making so much convenient food. So maybe I'll tone the convenience down a bit. Maybe I will start decanting food out. That's a risk. It's a risk, but that's what I can take, yeah? And we'll see if it works or it doesn't work. Because do we need all this sophistication if we just go back to decanting our food back into a ceramic dish or something that you can put in your microwave or your oven that you've already got in your house? Would that be such a bad thing if I then got tens of thousands of plastic out? No, it wouldn't. And people are saying that to us. Makes you think, doesn't it? We've got so used to this convenience thing. So used to it. There's my list. So when we went through trail bottle film bag, we went through our top 20 items. As you can see, milk and eggs is right at the top, ready meals up there. We do, you know, we are 30% of the frozen ready meal market, so we're quite big in that. But you can see there's absolutely some big numbers there, some big tonnages. Sorry, that last one. Perfect. So, just to summarise then, and obviously I've covered quite a lot of ground there, taking you through the whole of Iceland and what we're doing and why we're doing it. You don't have to agree with it. You absolutely do not. All we've done is been a catalyst basically to say this is what we're doing, this is our stance, this is where we're going, this is our journey. We want support and help to do that, and thankfully that's coming, it's drones to us. And we've got a few supplier days coming up where we're listening to all the ideas in the next few weeks. I've got all the buyers in our business absolutely coming to that. So the buyers are living this with me. I can't do this on my own. I have to live this dream with all the rest of the team. The technologists, the food technologists, the packaging technologists, everyone's living this with us. It cannot be done by one person. It's got to be a team effort. And don't think in your own business, Alison was talking earlier on, you can do it on your own. You've got no chance. You have to have a massive support squad. And if there's some doubters around, you've got to drive through it. You have to drive through it. And it's a pain at times, but you have to because it's the right thing to do. We'll leave it there. Okay, thank you.
Ian, thank you so much. It's big and it's bold, and you've been very candid and straightforward about it, which is nothing less than we'd expect, of course. Let's take a couple of questions directly for Ian, if that's okay, before we move on to the panel debate. We must have a couple of questions in the audience, if not 10 or 20 or 100. So, Philip Chadwick from Packaging News. Good old friend is putting his hand up. Do we have a mic, please, for Phil? Yes, just coming.
Volume.
Thanks very much indeed. Some fantastic presentations. Apologies, I just missed the start of Martin's presentation, so you may have covered this. But there's one thing that's interesting in all of this is that the issue of litter, particularly, we talk a lot about our coastlines, talk a lot about our environment. Do you feel that the public, UK public, has got off lightly in this debate?
Want me to answer
that's
that?
that's
Ian,
to everyone,
that's
by
for
the
you.
way.
Ian, that's for you.
That's for me.
Questions for Ian.
Yes. So can you
put his mic? He's got his little.
Got me back. Got me back. Back. Here. Okay. Yes is the answer to that. We've got to support that. We've got to help it. Education's everything here. We've got to help a lot on plastics. We've got to help a lot on litter. Retailers can do that. We can communicate it. We've got quite a lot of ways of communicating to people in store, point of sale material, our websites. We've got to do a lot of work, a lot more work to do that. And I think if we have a common approach to it through some government initiatives and also through help across the board in our councils, then I think that will help a lot in understanding what we can and cannot recycle.
Great. Any other questions? Yes. One over here.
Keep fit.
I was going to say, you wouldn't want to be here this afternoon.
Tony Barron from Eco Veritas. We're interested in the data behind this. To what degree is this push, so far as supermarkets are concerned, a matter of competitive advantage, or in what degree is it a matter of sharing information and sharing learning?
It's a fair question.
Okay, so this is easy. We're not doing this for competitive advantage. If we're doing that, we're going to lose a fortune. We are. We're going to actually put a lot of money aside to do this. So that's the first thing. The second thing, absolutely we want to share it, and that's why we've got all our supplier base in. That's product suppliers, packaging suppliers, and raw material suppliers to say, these are our challenges, lads. What are they? You know, what have you got as solutions? And you know what? The response has been brilliant. So we've got an investment in this too, big investment.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ian Schofield? Oh, there's one over here. Sorry, you're running back and forth.
Go for it. Good old Jane.
Hello, Jane Beavis from the Unpack Recycling label. Great to have the second member of the day giving us a huge endorsement following Co-op this morning. And thanks for sharing the work that we've been doing on this. For those of you who aren't currently members of OPRL and memorise that grid that flashed up, unfortunately I am going to have to kill you before you leave the show. Alternatively, you can pay up your membership and get a closer view of it all. That chart, which we worked on with a number of members, including Ian, was a first step towards giving members a steer on which packaging materials to go for and which to avoid. What more would you want to see from bodies like ourselves in supporting the industry?
I think the next step is probably with us. What's next? Because we're going through the learnings now of what is allowable and what is not allowable. And there's a lot, as you saw on my slides, there's a lot of confusion where things, do you need to rinse the tray before you put it in the bin? There's a lot of things that, you know, do you need to wash your soup can before you put it in your recycling? There's a lot of things that have come about because of this discussion, which means we can just have a bit more clarity. But I think we need every retailer to sort of help that clarity. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Now we're moving into questions which I think we should be opening up to the whole panel. So we'll now move on. We'll say thank you so much to Ian Schofield. Everybody, big clap, please. Now, just before we move on, I'd like to first of all mention, Martin asked me to mention, and he's quite right, there are some members of the press, I believe the BBC are here somewhere, and of course you're all very welcome. And also, if you're standing and your legs are now sore, because we're an hour in, this session is now also being streamed in the EcoPack Theatre, which I've just received a text message to tell me is empty, so you're welcome to go and sit down if you wish. And there is also still standing room, but a bit more space, where it's being streamed in the Innovation Theatre, which is over in that corner. But of course, you're welcome to stay. Right, so let's move swiftly on. So Ian, thank you again. And we're now going to move on to our panel debate. I'm delighted to welcome our three other speakers, who are Ian Ferguson, the Environment Manager at the Co-op, Nick Brown, Head of Sustainability at Coca Cola European Partners, and Kevin Weiss, who is a Senior Packaging Technologist and Circular Economy Lead at M&S. And of course, Martin is still with us. Now, the way we're going to run this is Martin and I are going to ask a couple of questions, and then we'd like to turn it over to questions from the audience, from you, so that we get real, like I said, real interaction. Now, the very first thing I'm going to ask Ian, Nick, and Kevin to do is to give us their elevator pitch, if you will, as to what is the current state of play, the current approach from each of your organisations on this very broad plastics issue. So, Ian Ferguson, let's start with you. Tell us about what the Co-op are doing.
Okay, so can you hear me now? The first thing I want to say is that I've stolen a line from the Prince of Wales, and that is we want to keep plastics in the economy and out of the environment, out of the oceans. And the best way of doing that, we think, is to make them easy to recycle, and the best way of keeping plastics out of the oceans is to avoid diffuse plastic pollution, so deal with the source of diffuse plastic pollution. So a couple of years ago, we started with our ambition to make everything easy to recycle in our range, all the packaging, and we changed how we measured that. We measure that now by product line. We were measuring by product weight, by packaging weight, which confuses the consumer really, because a glass bottle and a plastic film to them is 50% recyclable, whereas by weight that's over 90% recyclable. When we started measuring by line, we were at 46%. We've made huge progress, partly because the changes in OPRL, which we anticipated and which Jen nicely said that we helped with. I remember poring over that matrix several times. It's great fun. We are now at 71% easy to recycle, so that's a big, big change. To do that, we worked to start with the local authorities and the waste management companies to sense check that what we were doing was what they wanted us to do, to improve their recycling, to improve their viability financially, and to make sure they had an end market. I brought that thinking to the Rationalisation of Packaging Working Group, which Kevin's on. His thinking is absolutely essential on that. We are, as a retail industry, many of us are working together to that same improvement in recyclability aim, and that aim is worked through by simplifying packaging, simplifying plastic packaging particularly, taking colour out, taking complexity out, and narrowing the range of polymers. And I know Kevin's ambitions to get to one polymer. It would be fantastic if we could do that, but it's trying to simplify that. And part of that simplicity needs simplicity for the consumer. The simplicity for the consumer comes from simple collections, the same across the country, which RAP are working on through the sensitive collection, and the application of a gold standard recycling label. And there is only one in the UK, and that's the OPRL system. And I would urge everybody, but everybody, to get on board with the OPRL system. The more people get on board with it, the cheaper it becomes for everybody, but the better it becomes for everybody. So if we get that working, that's great for consumers. Somebody asked about, that's Packaging News asked about, is the public being left off lightly? The public is confused. The public is confused about the labelling on packaging. They're also confused because they can't recycle on the go. So you give them a bit of packaging that says widely recycled. Where are the bins on the go? So we need that system across the UK to reflect what we put in the packaging. And we also need those bins emptied, because when they're overflowing, they're just going to get littered. And there's a little snippet of information that comes from the Disney Corporation. If there isn't a bin within 25 paces in a Disney World or that sort of place, the packaging they've got, the carry, gets dumped on the floor. So you need lots of bins, you need them emptied, you need them the same, you need them simple, and you need them to reflect what we put on the pack, because we deal with 391 local authorities. They deal with their little area, but having 33 different confusing messages to consumers that don't reflect what we say just stops the whole system working completely. So we want to get to everything easy to recycle, and I know that other retailers want to do that. We have worked with other retailers to try and deliver that, and we will continue to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Nick, could you talk us through where Coca Cola are at the moment?
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, my name's Nick Brown. I'm Head of Sustainability for Coca Cola European Partners in Great Britain. So we are the franchise bottler for the Coke company in Britain, and we run 6 manufacturing sites, and we produce a wide range of packaging formats. I bring a slightly different perspective because I'm not a retailer. The packaging formats we use are a bit simpler and a smaller range than the retailers do. In a couple of minutes, just like to give you 2 things really. Our view on what makes sustainable packaging, and then our view on the unique times in which we are currently operating and some of the unique opportunities that that represents. I won't be able to go into detail on much of this, but it will be hopefully some stimulus for the questions and the discussions. So we've been passionate about sustainable packaging for a long time. Our first partnership on littering with Keep Britain Tidy was in 1965. Our first use of recycled PET in our plastic bottles was in 1991. We've been calling for reform to the producer responsibility scheme in Great Britain for around 10 years now, so really pleased to see that getting some traction. In 2011, we invested to build the UK's first major bottle recycling plant to recycle plastic bottles back into the material that we can use. So for 5 years now, we've been using 25% recycled content in all our plastic bottles. But there's still a lot more to be done, and I think whilst there's been a great push on recycling over the last few years, people's perception of littering is that that hasn't improved at all. Now, the data is difficult, but I don't think many people would say that littering is an acceptable level in Great Britain. So last year, we started looking at and supporting alternative approaches to tackling things like litter, and that included coming out in support of well-designed interventions like deposit return schemes. And if that comes up in the discussions, we'll be able to talk about that a bit more. So what's our view? Where do we want to go over the next few years? What's our guiding principle around sustainable packaging? We set an ambition that we want all our packaging to be recovered. All our packaging to be recovered, so that more of it can be recycled and none of it ends up being littered. Now, that's a massive undertaking, but it's the principle that guides all our thinking now around sustainable packaging. And there are three things I'd just like to call out that we think are the biggest contributions that we can make. One is to make our packaging as sustainable as possible, and there's a lot of things in there, but that's mainly about making sure it is recyclable, 100% recyclable, and includes recycled content. Because if your packaging isn't recyclable and you don't use recycled content, and it's very difficult to explain to other people why it should be collected and reprocessed. The second is to use the power of our brands, and I think the brands and the retailers do have a great opportunity, but there are certainly great opportunities for Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers to contribute as well. Use the power of your brands to contribute to getting across the message about how important recycling is and how important it is not to litter. And the third area is collaborating with others to improve the collection systems that we've got in the UK. So that is things like producer responsibility reform. It is things like a more standardised, harmonised collection system. It is things like supporting initiatives to tackle litter. So we're in a unique time at the moment. There is so much to be positive about at the moment. There's so much focus on our industry, so much focus on the industry that you all work in. And there's political will and industry will to do something about it. So we do have a 25-year environment plan that's committed to a resource and waste and resources strategy this year. It's committed to looking at reform of the producer responsibility scheme, things that are really important for our industry. We have got a litter strategy, and I think that litter strategy is great in the fact that it reflects just how complex and multifaceted the issue of littering is. Yes, there's a huge role in consumer behaviour, but there's also a role in having the right bins in the right place, communicated properly. There's a massive role for communications, but there's also a role for enforcement. So the litter strategy reflects all that and is doing a proper piece of work on the role of initiatives like deposit return schemes. So it's great to see that. What's also really positive is that there are more and more voluntary activities getting more traction. So call out RAP and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the work that they're trying to do around bringing together a voluntary coalition called the Circular Plastics Commitment to look at how people all along the chain can collaborate. Things like the British Plastics Federation looking at a marine litter pledge, a great initiative that everyone in our industry should be getting behind and supporting. And those litter initiatives, communities are getting more engaged in fighting back against littering. So we're supporting, and we're really pleased to support, and please get out and get involved. This weekend is Keep Britain Tidy's Great British Spring Clean. So last year they got 300,000 people out in their communities tackling litter. And it might sound like it's just a clean-up initiative, but it's so much more than that. It's built on the insight that where there is less litter, there less gets littered. It's built on the insight that if you can engage more people at that particular time, they are more likely to pick up litter during the year. So it's underpinned by great insight about how those kinds of initiatives can make a massive difference towards littering in our communities. So if you haven't yet, go on their website, find out where your local event is, give up an hour over this weekend. I know it's cold. I think on Sunday it's going to be warmer. If you don't find an event near you, get on the website. It's really easy to set your own up. And if you want to do it in your village and clean the verge in front of your house, that's absolutely fine. So get involved in that. And more community groups are doing that. So we do have a great opportunity. A lot of things are that the industry's been, or the more progressive members of the industry that have been talking about for a decade, are now in place, and we've got to grasp this opportunity, and we've got to be the people who are explaining what the options are, what's going to work, and be there to help implement it. Because there's things we can do on our own, but there's so many things we need to do in collaboration with national and local government. So get involved, either through your own voluntary actions or through your trade associations, to really feed into those debates on those different policy modules. Okay, hopefully some food for thought. We'll see where the conversations go in the debate.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick. And Kevin, talk us through where M&S are at.
Very good. Good afternoon, everyone. Most of you who know or work with Marks & Spencer will know that 10 years ago, actually 11 years ago this year, Plan A was born under Stuart Rose, the chairman at the time. There was a recognition that as a retailer we had a responsibility to the environment in which we acted. And that Plan A has actually formed a core of everything that we do. And those of you who work with us closely will know that Plan A is applied to our food suppliers and now is increasingly applied to our packaging suppliers. So this culminated last year, June the 6th, I believe, the day that Mr. Trump said that he would not sign to the Paris Accord any further. We relaunched new commitments, and two of which were about plastic and the way in which we use plastic in the future. One was that all of our packaging within the business, and that's all of it, should be 100% recyclable by 2022. And that we would have a plan in place to move all of our packaging where it was plastic and where we were still using plastic to one polymer. So that was a commitment we've made, which will be audited and governed. We'll carry on with the strategy behind that. The strategy that we applied 3 years ago is in place. We continue to work on it. It is about using the best materials for the job. It is about a continuous evaluation about those materials, making sure that we are not using excessive materials. After all, no retailer wants to sell packaging, they want to sell product. But they want to sell a product that is actually pristine for you to consume in your homes the way you'd expect it to be sold to you. The second part is actually looking at the carbon footprint, the waste and the energy and the water used in those materials. And it's an essential component which has sadly been dropped from the arguments we've heard over the last few months. There is absolutely a thing to notice, that water is going to be a very important commodity, and if we're not careful we can be finding ourselves with lots and lots of consequences we never imagined. And then always ask the question, what can we do to reduce? And yes, like all retailers, we have some sillies. And we're very glad that the customers point them out, because it means we can do something about it. And certainly from the packaging professional's point of view, that's good for us, because it means that we can move things on. The second pillar is about Optimum Design. And it's about asking for people to really understand what sustainability means. And this means engaging the full supply chain when you design a piece of packaging. And I know some of you in this room have had this dialogue with us. It's about not stopping with just selling it to us. It's asking the questions about whether it can be recycled, how it's going to be recycled, what its end life is going to be. So that when you come to present the pack, we have a full picture of how that will exist in its life. And the business is actually aiming, really, by 2025 to be zero waste in all cases. So that's food waste, packaging waste, supply chain waste. We want to be at a zero position. That's our goal. And then the final piece is, who are our suppliers? Have you really understood what it means to be sustainable? Do you know what Clean Sweep is all about? Do you understand that your material passes through your hands has to be absolutely accounted for. I want to know where it's come from, who's selling it to you, how is it behaving in your factory? Are you using too much energy to produce what you're producing? What are your relationships like with your staff? How are you training them? Do they really understand what you're doing and the environmental conditions? And I will cite Nurdles on this case. I know there's tremendous work going on to stop plastic nurdles getting into the environment. But time and again, I see tankers arriving at sites where the driver has not been told what to do. And he leaves a big puddle of nurdles on the site and drives away. Those things should not be happening. And I would urge you to actually look to the British Plastics Federation, get signed up to Clean Sweep. And then the final piece is, what about your ethical stance? How are you behaving with the people and about the staff that are working for you? Are they engaged? Do they really believe in what you're trying to do from a sustainable standpoint? We think if we get all those bits in place, then we've got a really good shout of using the right materials all the time. And that's not just plastic, it's cardboard, it's metal, it's glass as well. So that's our place at the moment.
Fabulous, thank you so much.
Ian, it would be hard. I mean, one might imagine when you're asleep at night, you're visualizing a world possibly without plastic. I don't know, but that's, you know, reading the charts, that's the way it looked. You might say that's a little extreme. If we have a situation where it can be shown by the evidence, by the science, that a piece of plastic packaging offers the best solution to protect the product, would that still be deemed to be too much packaging? Okay, that's to you. And therefore, any packaging any plastic rather is too much plastic. Any, and looking at it from the other side, and here we always try to look for the compromise. You know me. Is there a position where we can say, look, there is a future for plastics in our lives? It is justified, it is warranted, but to do so, we've really got to get that message across to the public. The public have got to come along with us, and the public have got to understand. So there is, sorry, a few questions in there. I don't know if you want to start, Ian, by the excessive is plastic, too much plastic.
What was the question? Yeah. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yeah. A bit more volume.
Can you hear me? Yeah. We've made it a bit easier to make a decision on plastics. We've just said no plastics. I expect, as we go through this cycle of removing them, that plastics will fight back. I always said that. I said that to the business. And I said somebody's going to produce a data sheet at some point that's going to tell me that something is happening to this, which we have got our recycling. So the government gets its recycling action together. We get our marking up, a simple marking up system. I put a graph on to say that I think there will be a fight back, and there should be a fight back. However, it's really clear in my remit right now, no plastic. So I'm starting out in my optimum of packaging, good word. When you're optimizing your packaging at the moment, I'm optimizing without plastic, rightly or wrongly. It's an easier start for me. I would like it in there sometimes because it would solve a lot of issues, and that's the point. It's actually good for so many things. But right now, it's out. So I start with no plastic, but I expect there'll be a fight back.
Okay, so there's a difference here, which is good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in order for you to not be vilified, because in his model you probably would be vilified, how do you deal with that, and how do you bring along your customers?
I think there is a key issue to the customer engagement piece, which is most customers at home believe that when they put their materials in a receptacle that is marked recycling, that something is being done with it. That's the good faith that they give to their local authority or the waste contractor. I think the piece we've heard earlier this year about China saying we're not taking it anymore has been a bit of an eye-opener that, oh, I didn't realise that was happening. And so it's called into question, and we've seen a real sort of a rather muddying of the waters between ocean plastic and the fact that their recycled material is not getting recycled. Because actually, largely, it's been captured, it's just not been disposed of correctly. So I think we've got to sort of, we have to come at it from that end and actually fulfill the promise that the local authorities make, which is we will dispose of your rubbish in a really sensible manner. what would be really nice is that we could have an end market for that material. And for the recyclers, that's a very important thing, that it comes back into the system in some way. And Nick's point about actually making statements about putting post-consumer waste, post-consumer plastics in particular, back into the packaging is a very vital one to drive that market. So I think we've got to sort of go back to that and discuss why this is a problem that hasn't been solved yet. And it is partly to do with legislation and the muddle of recycling we've got.
And is that a story you'll give to your customers?
It's a very complicated one to give to them, and I'm not sure, and I think simplification
so that could be a difficulty.
Yeah.
Can I add a little on to that? Just following straight on from what Kevin was saying, I've put this challenge out several times to the plastic and packaging industry. For a material to be considered recyclable, it doesn't mean just say that you can put it around your system in the factory. It has to be collected for recycling, it has to be sortable for recycling, and there has to be an end market. If there isn't an end market, you've got to be the end market. There's no point looking for somebody else to be the end market. You've got to be the end market, or you've got to find one. Otherwise, it is not recyclable, full stop. I would say also that we have several NGOs asking us to reduce food waste. We have several NGOs asking us to reduce plastic use. Those two are in complete tension, and I will cite the example that Ian gave of the cucumber. We did sell cucumbers unwrapped for a few years. It was driving waste up through our supply chain. We put plastic back on. We did a live trial, and we found 30% less waste of cucumbers. Now that's 30% through our supply chain. That cucumber packaging also protects that cucumber in the customer's home. And we need to get across the message to the customer that packaging is helping them to reduce their food waste. And if they keep it on, a lot of customers take it off. If they keep it on, it will extend the shelf life of their product, but their fresh produce, by days, if not weeks. And I showed a carrot on Look North the other week. I had one carrot that had been in the fridge with no packaging, one carrot that had been in the fridge in the film that it came in, and the one that was in the film, fresh as the day we bought it. The other one, you could bend it almost over, and you just wouldn't eat it.
Yeah, sure.
And that's 2 weeks extra life by having a little bit of polythene on there. I can't see that. I haven't found another material that will do that. I'd love to, but I haven't.
Now, Nick, you have a commitment to use recycled content, so if you've got a commitment to recycled content, then obviously plastics feature in your future. Is there anything you want to sort of add to this?
Yeah,
I know a lot's been covered already, so you've probably had your word stolen a little bit.
No, not at all. There probably isn't one answer to this. There probably are a multitude of answers, and I think we do need to look at innovation. We need a proper innovation funnel across the industry of things, and there needs to be markets where that kind of innovation can be brought out. Now, not everything is going to be the right answer on day one. Looking longer term, there might be things that we don't know about today, or that not everyone knows about today, that actually have a major role to play. So I think innovation has a massive role. I think one of the things that Iceland's announcement might do is give more impetus for some of that innovation, and it might give more people a bit of confidence that there might be a market for it, even if they might not have the fully polished article now. I think when you start looking at how you scale some of those things, you do need to be a bit cautious. Yes. But as long as it's done in the right way, I think that's there can be some positive controls in place there. I mean, some of the innovation we're looking at, I mean, the use of recycled content is still innovation. The best way of using recycled content, the best way of providing a market for the materials, the packaging at the end of life. All our water products and Honest Tea products, we're using bio-sourced plastics, bio-sourced PET in GB, which again is another innovation. And it's not the finished article yet, but in the future it might help play a role in a more sustainable set of packaging options.
I mean, Ian, is there anything you could buy into which these guys have mentioned, which you might see in the future for Iceland?
Of course. and they'll think of some of our ideas as well. It goes both ways. It goes both ways. And we're always in other retailers. Obviously the Dutch retailer today, we've been working really closely with them. So that's been a very interesting development today, if you didn't know, where they've gone to 800 own label lines totally across the store. They're the first retailer to do it, EcoPlan. I mean, what a good job they've done. Are all those materials recyclable? They've not gone the recycle route, they've gone the compostable route, which in Holland is available. It isn't available here, so there's no point in me doing that. So it's interesting, you're looking at all the technologies on a global basis and trying to do the best fit for that product. But if we all had the same for cucumber, it's an interesting one on food waste, because if you didn't know, we did quite a big survey with our customers, and actually the packaging was causing more food waste, not less, in our customers, because they were keeping it for longer. They bought it, keeping it for longer. They weren't managing it. So managing food waste is managing in the fridge. We've got to help them manage the fridge and the freezer better than they're doing. We need indicators on things to tell them it's there. Some of that technology is coming really quickly now, where you scan it with your mobile phone and it tells you, with active intelligent packaging, how much date you've got on your product. So these things have got to make a big difference to me.
I know Josh is keen, but I know you are.
Could I just say, from what little I've seen of the Dutch supermarket, they seem to be putting something like PLA or cellulose on, and claiming plastic free. It's plastic. It's plastic, and it's also, if you want to compost it, it's got to go in a food waste collection system. Can't go in the food waste collection system in the UK. I'm not even sure it can go in the food waste collection in the Netherlands. So it feels very gimmicky.
Yes.
I was going to make one point.
That's a very good point, by the way, on this.
Coming back to education, and it's a very sad point, really, is that our President, Secretary of State, who we are lauding for his work on this job, was the person who cut out the food science from a curriculum, which actually gives the kids education about all the things about managing food. To think we have to put a sticker on something to say your fridge is too cold, that's the level we've got to with this education. We've got to do it. I mean, if we're going to really work hard at this. But somebody asked the question earlier. I think Phil asked the question: has the consumer been let off lightly? I think we have failed to actually keep delivering the right messages to them to ensure that they keep themselves informed, and that's because we think. It's very easy to do. You go to a shop, everything's fine, put it in a fridge, nobody will worry about it. But as you say, we get to a use-by date sometimes and we throw it away. We don't actually think about whether that smells off. So I think we've got all sorts of things in our education system to work on as well.
So, go on, you.
Yes, just yes, you can hear me. Wonderful. If you could boil it down. Now we heard a bit from Ian Schofield about what you're looking for from your suppliers and how you're hoping to work with them. I wonder if we could take the same question to our other three panelists to say, what do you want and what are you looking for from packaging suppliers and the designers and other consultants and development people who you work with? What do you want them coming to you saying?
Well, I would say we would want them to come to us with recyclable solutions that they've checked that really are recyclable by talking to waste management experts, and that the solutions do not compromise shelf life. And we really would like them not to be more expensive. Now, that goes without saying for a retailer. So we only want the earth. But we are on the same journey as Iceland. We would like to see less plastic because that challenges the consumer. But at the moment, we see a role for plastic. We can't see right now that it hasn't got a future, but we're open to persuasion.
From our perspective, I think one of the things that's been really significant in the last 3 years is the amount of collaboration that all the retailers have had over some of the big issues. And I think from the supplier's point of view, it'd be really good to see a bit more collaboration from them as well, sharing knowledge on materials, because it's very easy to get into silos over that sort of thing. But, yeah.
So from our point of view, I think there's two things I'd pick out. One is optimization of what we've currently got, so better ideas of how to manage the end of the life. I don't want another supplier to come to me and say something's technically recyclable and therefore it's okay. I want suppliers who understand the whole life cycle of their products and their materials. Helping us to optimize and improve what we've currently got. The other one is innovation, and I think there are lots of opportunities for new business models that we haven't found yet. So the example, the one I'm using at the moment, this one I'm really most proud of, is this is an RFID chipped bottle. Students at Reading University have been buying those at the beginning of their term and getting unlimited refills of not just water but Coke, Fanta, Sprite, Lil, all our products from from dispensers. So what we've got there is a completely different model where this packaging is now worth a term's worth of drink. No one is littering this. No one is forgetting it. Everyone's putting it in their bag and reusing it. And I'm so excited and so interested in brand new models for both packaging working in partnership with dispense technology, because I think there's a great opportunity. It's not going to work for everything. There are challenges of how you manage refills in a retail and take-home environment. But the reason that something doesn't work in one channel doesn't mean it's not a really valid contribution in another channel. So I'm sure loads of people now will come and tell me that they've got the answer, and I'm more than happy to have the conversations afterwards.
Ian, can I just follow up on the understanding the full impacts of your packaging? And when I said you've got to engage with the waste management industry, that's another plug for OPRL here. OPRL are working on an expert system that will allow anybody who's designing packaging to go into a portal and put the components in there, and it will tell you whether the packaging is recyclable, give you the label, but it will also give you information that will help you to refine that packaging to improve recyclability and hopefully get it into widely recycled. So again, please join up.
I've also, while we're on the old OPRL plug, OPRL have developed an app, and we're looking for sponsors. I say we because I'm sitting on the board. It's an app on your mobile phone which, when you point it at the barcode on a piece of packaging, tells you how to recycle it and where the nearest recycling point is.
Right. I think the message is we love you, Jane.
Yes.
I think they're all right as well.
Fabulous. Right, I'd like to turn it over to the audience now. We have 15, 20 minutes left, something like that. I'm sure we have lots of questions, comments. If you make a comment, please do also ask a question. That's you know, that's better than standing up and holding forth.
The question can't be, can I just make a comment?
And the question can't be, can I make a comment? So we have a microphone. Do we have a sea of hands or people who would like? We have one over here.
Ian, Jamie.
Let's start with
the gentleman over there with the stripy tie.
Jamie,
they
yes.
all say that, don't they?
Hi, Ian Jamie, Managing Director of Stager Clear Packaging. We make cartons out to recycle PET to the M&S specification. I got just three comments really. I'm a governor of a school in Coventry, an academy, and there's precious little done in schools these days to teach the kids about the environment. And I often thought if you teach kids about their looking after themselves, their health, you know, you might as well teach them about other things like the environment as well. So I think you'd agree with me that's really important starting point if we can get people from an early age to appreciate our environment. The second point I've got, and it's a bit of a question really, if we kind of redesigned our PRN system, that's the PERN system, to discourage exports of our waste, wouldn't that help this country to grow its own industry, to recycle more and recycle better, and then industries to grow up to use the recycler? So that's my second question. Third point is I think government should be far more prescriptive about what plastics we should be using. Okay, thank you.
Wow.
I'll answer the first one. Hands up, anybody who's aware of Waste Busters?
I know that one.
Good, okay. Make it your ambition tonight to go online and look at Waste Busters. Probably the best education package there is for this whole subject. They've done about 6 million children now. They could well use. They work with RAP, they work with Recoup, they work with local government as well. It's a really, really good program. So that's my bit.
And adding to that, there's a really strong eco schools program that you can have a look at as well. That's an excellent program that's got lots of these principles in mind.
And on repatriating recycling in the UK, that needs the system to be designed so that it encourages that, but it also needs people who are making packaging demanding they recycle it back to put in their packaging. It needs the system to be joined up.
Yeah, can I?
And you're an exemplar of that.
Actually, Ian, do you want to please say?
Just one from this is typical. Sorry. Typical Iceland thinking. We thought that when they stopped the China ban that day, we thought that they should have brought it all back in containers and put it in Whitehall. And they would have done something about it. That's what we thought. We should have dumped it in Whitehall.
Good heavens.
And said, sort that out.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Good grief. Now, look, just another point on that. And I know I'm not supposed to do any of the answering. But on the export part of it, I think it is a really important point that we shouldn't be favouring, or exports shouldn't get a benefit over the typical, within the UK, PRN. We've also got to think about some of that export goes into the other parts of Europe, which we would say is acceptable. One of the things I think we should be campaigning for as an industry is a code of conduct regarding the countries where our bales are exported to ensure that there is no misuse of labour conditions are absolutely as we would expect, and that no children, for instance, are involved. And that, I genuinely think, is something that we can sign up to, the NGOs can equally sign up to. To me, that is a no-brainer.
And for those of you who have been involved with it, but that is exactly what the Global Plastics Protocol is all about with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, working towards a standard code of practice across the globe.
Should adopt it now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Shall I comment on the third point? Don't like what's one hanging, but government being prescriptive on which plastics can and can't be used. I think in a very limited and targeted way, yes, I think that is okay. I think there are some materials that cause so many issues at end of life and with reprocessing that it is worthy of a debate. I wouldn't like to see it go too far because it potentially stifles a lot of innovation. I would rather it was focused on outcomes that were required. So a circular material that is recycled and does have recycled content in it, and therefore potentially that's giving you a better vehicle to support innovation than just an outright ban on something.
And that should be driven by a fiscal system, not a ban.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We have a question down here. There's a young lady sitting down, so I don't know if you can see her. Here we go. Please do stand up.
She's happy to stand up, I think.
Hi, just a comment. So you keep talking about pressure of, you keep pressuring other people like retailers, consumers and government of changing behavior for environmental issues. So, but what are your plans as a companies for changing maybe your behavior issues? Because you keep talking about staying with plastic, not illuminating it like Iceland will do. So what are your plans? What are your behavioral issues?
Well, you can. The major thing is that we have got now, with the world in which we live, particularly in the developed world, we have a very integrated, just-in-time supply chain system. And as Ian will find, and I'm sure he'll admit, moving that whole supply chain system is a very ponderous, difficult animal. You can move something very, very fast and actually give yourself all sorts of unintended consequences around. I think if you look at some of the .com businesses, they have found this. They've built one-size-fits-all, and it's now seen to be consuming vast amounts of material that they shouldn't use. So they have to go back and look at that. I think what Ian and Iceland have done is fantastic. It's held our feet to the fire. It's made us all go back and look at what we're doing really critically and actually ask questions, or really critical questions that we should have perhaps asked on a much more frequent basis. We are all doing something, but maybe not at the speed that Iceland are proposing to do it.
We have made huge changes in the packaging we use to improve the recyclability. We've taken complexity out, we're taking colour out. We've moved a long way from where we were on recyclability to where we are now. We've moved from 46% of our lines, as I said earlier, to 71% of our lines easy to recycle. It's no mean feat, and in doing that, we've also talked to other retailers through industry bodies to help them to get to the same level of thinking, and it has been very, very positive, hasn't it, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And we really, really have to avoid unintended consequences. Food waste is the big one. I know Ian's mentioned it. I'm interested to see that. Just, can't say any more than that, really.
And I think I mentioned in the opening remarks some of the things that we think are really important and we are working and innovating on. So our bottles are lighter than they've ever been. Our bottles are about half the weight. Well, this particular one is about half the weight of what it was when it was launched in the 90s. It is more recyclable, the labels, the glues, it's containing recycled content. We are buying back the material to use to get to 50% recycled content. We're using the power of our brands to communicate. So I think quite often in these kinds of sessions we do talk about the bits that we can collaborate on, and the bits that we can collaborate on are things like the policy areas and where we need collaboration within the industry, but also within local and national government. But I think every company obviously needs to be able to explain their packaging footprint. Where are the biggest impacts that they have, and what are they doing them to address them?
And those changes that Coca Cola have made have influenced other people in the industry to make similar changes. So we're all on a very similar page as retailers on the recyclability of our packaging.
If I could ask a...
Plastic, the bottles, that is.
Sorry. Thank you. If I could ask a follow-up question, one of the books that I read to my 4.5-year-old boy has a wonderful line which explains to very small children about how life is a great balancing act, and it puts me in mind of that. So my question is, in light of the last question, what are the compromises that we're going to have to make and accept in order to achieve the goals that Ian, you're talking about, and the other wider goals that may or may not involve removing plastics from our packaging?
Can I answer with the question, which compromises are we allowed to make? Are we allowed to increase food waste? Because there's a court-held commitment target to reduce food waste. Are we allowed to increase food waste in our supply chains and in the customers' homes? I don't think we are.
I wonder if Nick, if I could look at you and say it was a talking point at a certain point in the past around the quality and the clearness of recyclate coming into Coca Cola bottles, and is that something that is that either solved or something that marketing teams will accept a certain level of less clear recyclate for the sake of argument?
Okay, so I'll answer your first question first and your second question second. So I think there are some compromises that you absolutely can't make. Food safety, hygiene, I think they are no-go areas. I think there are a lot of things to play for in other areas. I think in terms of appearance, the example you use, actually, I think we've now got to a stage where we're confident that we can do it without altering the appearance. But there might be other pack formats or other materials where the appearance might be one. I think a compromise from industry is to contribute more to the end-of-life costs of the packaging that it puts on the market through reform of the producer responsibility scheme. So I think there is a compromise there in contributing more. I think when you get to consumers and lifestyles, it's a slightly different question. Are we going to ask people to compromise and do different things at the end of life? That's what a deposit scheme is. It is asking people to make a different, to carry out a different behaviour when they finish using a packaging and giving that a financial incentive. So I think there are compromises in several places along the chain. I think some are absolutely no-goes, some can be minimised, and others are really interesting debates for where we want to go with convenience and on the go. I think that is a really big area where I'm not sure things will look the same in 10 years as they do now.
The compromise that has been made is that Coca-Cola bottles now look a bit grey, but people accept that now because that's what the recycled content is. So we have to continue to move that design view forward with the customer?
I'm lucky. I look after the cycle of launching a product from start to finish. So when I'm looking at developing a product with the buyers, I cover it right at the start, right to the end. So the product life cycle analysis of that product, we take a lot of risks. We take a lot of risks. We would never compromise food safety, never. But we'll take a lot of risks. We will get a lot of things wrong. We will make some mistakes, but we'll recover quickly from them. That's what we're good at. So you have to make mistakes sometimes to go ahead. This plastic, the pledge that we've made, we won't get everything right in it. We will not. There'll be something that we'll compromise on that the customer, and I come back to the customer every time, they pay my wages, the customer will not like. They might not like my paper trays for ready meals. I might have to come up with something really, really quickly. I may change soup from a plastic pot to a board pot, and they might not like it. There's a lot of things I will do which will not work first time. That is Iceland, that is retail, that is coming out with ideas, that is failure, recovering quickly, getting on to the next. We'll never, ever risk food and that, and safety in that. But you've got to make mistakes. How the hell do you learn if you don't?
I think we've got... Oh, so are we doing...
I don't know if Kevin wants to say something on this.
Very much along the same lines. I think there is also the point that we have got, as customers, all of us have got very used to having everything all the time. And actually some of the issues around plastic packaging can be solved by having good seasonality, rather than having to ship things long distances. Would we go back to that and accept seasonality? I don't know. But again, that's a compromise the customer would have to work with the retailer on.
I think we have time for 2 more questions, and I know we've had signals. One is the lady with the camel coat, as they say on Question Time, at the back. And there's a gentleman just at the back there who's just signalled as well. So you first. Might be able to do the 2 together.
Thank you. So far you've talked a lot about primary packaging and around consumer and customer behaviour. I was just wondering if you could share a little bit around where you've been innovating in terms of secondary and tertiary packaging for transportation, etc.
Was your question different from that? Right, fine. So if you just do
Okay, well, very simple from us. We've been using BOC crates for about 20, 30 years, I think, which means that we don't take secondary packaging into stores. So
we may as well go along the line. I mean, primary, secondary, whoever wants this one.
We use returnable crates for a lot of fresh produce. We also use cardboard and shrink wrap, and we recycle the cardboard and shrink wrap. There's been innovation on shelf-ready packaging, but that's mostly in cardboard.
Not a lot to add, to be honest. Again, there's some innovation coming about different multi-pack formats that perhaps are glues rather than films and boards. Those are things that we're looking at as well.
Action for you, Ian.
Coming back to the whole chain, it's massive. All that's massive. We have to do it as part of our job. It's a bit like online as well. 30% of our sales are online. We're still sending them carrier bags. That cannot be right. We could do crates differently, perhaps out of corrugated. There's a lot of things that we're still in the middle of doing that we've got to think about. And what if you didn't know, and it really worked for us. In fact, one of our suppliers is here. We started to put clear plastic APET into all our stores for all our cooked meats and our cheeses, and it really worked. It was brilliant. It absolutely, sales rose because we did it. I'm now taking those out because they're part of our non-plastic policy. So another compromise, did something that went the right way because of our policy. I'm going another way. Will that work? Who knows?
And thank you. And the gentleman at the back, you've got the microphone? A microphone.
Just in the conversation you folks have had so far, you've talked about a lot about sort of recycling and all of that. But when decompostability came up, it was something you immediately almost shut down. If that's part of one of the potential solutions, understanding that it's probably going to take as much education and effort to get through as all the other bits you do, why is it not part of the plans?
Can I answer that one?
Please.
Compostable packaging comes in 2 broad categories. One is EN 13432 certified only, and one is home compostable certified. taking the first part, EN 13432 certified, has to go into a food waste collection. The food waste collections in the UK do not allow it. The only things that are in food waste collections in the UK are caddy liners, nothing else. So until there's a change in the collection facilities, it's closed down. Moving on to the home compostable, at least 50% of the population in the UK lives in cities with no access to home composting. The last estimate I saw on people home composting goes back to before the year 2000, and that was that 40% of households with gardens get involved in home composting. But that doesn't mean to say they get involved in home composting the packaging. So we're talking about a small number of people.
Your attention, please. Day one of the show is now complete. Please feel free to join us for a drink on the networking bar. Otherwise, we hope you have a safe journey home and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we applaud,
can I just finish that one? We're talking then about a very small number of people who can take advantage of compostable packaging. So we'd much rather make it recyclable currently, but when the solution on collection is there, let's go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Just one comment on that. Okay, one very quick comment. Yes.
From the man from OPC. Do you want to shout it? Go on, quick, quick.
The mic's on the way.
Oh, is it? All right, there we go.
Mr. Mike is on the way.
No, we're going to have to end.
Yeah, the main issue with compostable is two things. One, that you're taking a good resource and you're throwing it away, never to be used again. So that really is going against all the efforts about the circular economy. You're taking something and you're chucking it away. And the other thing is that it can contaminate the rest of the recycled train. And the danger of that happening is not insignificant. So I think the idea of having something that's compostable, I agree with everything that you've said about the number of people who would be able to compost things, but it just really shouldn't be part of our objective. We should be looking to recycle everything we can. So that really should be the focus of what, as a single message coming from the industry to the consumers.
No, because we still got two more to answer and then we'll have to end it. Sorry, do you want to add anything to the compostable debate?
It's exactly the same. It's the difficulty is we don't have a system for it. And it goes back to sustainable design principles. If you could design it for circularity, do it. And if there is a composting system, all well and good. And it's notable that the 2012 Olympics, which is always cited as where it worked really well, is because every cup was left at the gate as people left. So it was able to be controlled.
Closed system.
Yeah, that wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, now, since we've had the big announcement, I'm afraid we're going to have to end it there. Please do grab the guys afterwards and ask your question. Now, I'm going to hand over just for a couple of summing up comments from Martin.
Yeah, just to say, first of all, I think we've got to say massive thanks to these four brilliant people. I will cut this down for once to the bare minimum. I think what this shows is that, A, this is a very important debate, there's no question about it, but that the packaging supply chain and this whole debate, this issue, we're taking it very seriously. There can be no question about that. We are a responsible industry. You are part of being in a responsible industry, and that we're all very motivated about this. We are going through a process of reinvention, and it's something we have to do ourselves now. What we don't want to see, I know it was alluded to, is government intervention in this, where it becomes prescriptive. If that happens, it's going to be very, very high-handed. There's not going to be much subtlety about it, and it may have some unintended consequences. It may well do. Why? Because the government know a bit about packaging, but they are not experts as you are, and that is going to be a big difference. So as I say, I do believe we have to do it now. Packaging does serve an incredibly important role. Most importantly, post-Brexit, it will be helping to feed over 60 million people. This is critical. We cannot and we don't because we're so used to dealing in packaging, we often forget the fundamentals of why packaging is so utterly important to our society. So every change, every measure, as has been demonstrated by all four of them, is measured. It isn't knee-jerk, it is considered. So if that was a mantra, I would urge you to adopt that as well, not to produce some sort of knee-jerk reaction without evidence, and to do what is right for your business. If we do that, we are going to achieve. I think we have absolutely got the brains to deal with this issue. That is there in abundance, and to play our full role in achieving the goals of the circular economy package. Thanks to all of you for being here. Thanks to all of them. A final round of applause.